Linda, hello.
You're on. Hello.
Great to see you, Linda. We've got Linda Bonner here from Linda Bonner Coaching. Linda is here to talk about Daniel's story. Linda, could you please give us a summary of Daniel's story?
Oh my gosh, Kieran. Do you know it's really so I read this a couple of times. I read it once. I tend to read things three times, right? Once to get an idea of what's going on, a second time to dig a little bit deeper, and a third time to really do my best to empathize with what the person is describing. And I can feel it even now, like Daniel's story. God, it just hit me on so many different levels. It really did. And it's powerful. One of the things I love about your book and the way that you're writing all of this, the way that you're putting all of this together, Kieran, is that it's just so simple, right? But it's so real. Like there are so many of us who will read Daniel's story who might not have experienced Daniel's exact situation, but there are elements of it where they're like, that's me. I avoided people. I had people say certain things to me. I sat there hoping the teacher wouldn't call on me, that I just wanted myself to be invisible. The tactics, right? Sorry, I feel like I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but it's the elements then of, there's a couple of things that stood out for me. Is it okay if I touch
Absolutely.
on them? Is that all right? So I love that Daniel recognizes that there is support, like this, the support at home, or the support in a number of different ways. And it's almost like, but who'll get it? Who'll really be able to understand what I'm going through? Or, you know what, something else and that stood out to me as well, because we all have that one friend who means very well when they say, sure, don't worry about it. It's fine. People will forget about it. And there's so many parts to that, that when somebody says something like that to me, like, don't worry about it. Why do you think I'm telling you? I'm telling you because I am worried about it. Now, if it was as simple for me as just not worrying about it, it would be boxed up and it would be gone. I'm worried about it. Um, the avoidance of people then, right? If I don't draw attention to myself, they'll forget about me. So, and whether that's one person in a class, whether it's a group of teenagers, young people, even if it's the teacher, right? If I pretend to look busy, they're not going to call on me and I'm fine. And it's almost like I've escaped, like I've survived another lesson or another class. The physical reactions that Daniel describes as well, where he's not in that particular situation. It's simply the thought of it. Something triggers in his mind, and his whole body starts to react in the way that it did. And that's just, Kieran, I think there's so many powerful pieces here in terms of these things are lasting, right? The words that we choose to use with people, the way that we choose to treat people has an impact on them. And what we think is funny or it's a joke, and we see the other person laughing perhaps and think, oh yeah, they're finding it funny too. We've no idea what's really going on behind the scene. And then to relive that with a trigger, even with something that's just so simple, and that, God, that gut reaction, I recognize it so much in myself as well. Um, Daniel brings up so many just really important points, right? The going against the grain. I wrote this one down because I loved it. The people who tend to stand out from the crowd, people who do go against the norm, and I use that in air quotes because it's what is the norm, anyways. And for young people, I think especially, yes, we as adults might have to do this as well. For young people, especially, it's almost like this sense of belonging, right? So it's, I want to belong to a group. I want to be accepted. So I'll do my best to fit in. Because you want to belong, or you've got to be strong enough to stand alone until you find your own tribe of people, people that you're comfortable with, people who you can be your authentic self around. And that's also something then that he brings up, right? That element of authenticity. So how many of us are our full selves in every situation? And I've read quite a bit then, there's a lot of research done around young people and how they mold, right? How they mold themselves to fit into particular situations as well. And he recognizes that some of his friends have done that. And he kind of thinks like what are they doing? You know, it's a bit childish, like stand up, like be who you are, go against the grain. And I just think, gosh, it's so between that element, the staying quiet, like if I'm quiet, then I can stay off their radar and I protect myself. And then, gosh, if there was one sentence that just nearly broke me, and it was got through the school day. You know, that whole thing of just like to get through it. It's not thriving, is it? It's hard.
Wonderful, Linda. Thank you so much. Beautiful summary. You know. How did you feel, Linda, when you were reading Daniel's story?
Oh, gosh. And I can feel it now. Like I'm very emotional. Very emotional, because if you've experienced anything similar, and again, it doesn't have to be what Daniel experienced specifically, word for word, detail for detail. If you've been in even part of his situation, it takes you right back. And you're just like, and it's hard. It can be hard to go back and to visit that place non-emotionally, or to wish the people well, right? Like we're always taught to do. And to, you know, and I think if we can do that, then it's a sign of healing and of acceptance and everything else. And I remember so many of my school days were spent avoiding people.
What advice, Linda, would you like to give Daniel?
Go against the grain.
It's okay.
Because as much as you can, those other people will stay doing whatever they're doing. Right? And it's if going against the grain is so important to you, and it's one of the things that I get from Daniel's story as well. There's something that's very important to him about that. You know, whether it's doing something different, being different, accepting people's differences, whatever that means for him. I mean, it's such a powerful story, because it's easy for us to say, right, ignore them. Yeah. That's what he's trying to do. That's why he's doing his best to ignore. That's how do you manage that then?
The lonely story.
Great word for it. And that, oh my gosh, that's a trigger, right? Mm. Because how many of us are comfortable to be alone? And as young people, especially, you want to know that you're accepted, right? It gives you that sense of, you know, a sense of self-worth almost. So again, I belong, I'm accepted, I'm like them. I don't have to stand alone. I don't have to be lonely if I'm like others.
Linda, you might have touched on it already, but we're going to talk about you now, if you're comfortable to do so.
Of course.
Linda, would you like to tell us a challenge you had when you were a teenager?
Where do I start? It's not terrible. It's like, where do I start? Yeah, and I'll keep the theme of Daniel's going. And there were a group of girls in my first school, Kieran, who, and I had seen them do it to other girls, right? Where they just decided, we don't like you anymore. You're not one of us. And we're going to make sure that everybody jumps on our bandwagon and not on yours. And with, so it's and there's no social media back in my day, right? And that's a good thing, because I don't actually know if I would have had, the strength, because it's hard enough. And so that's what I struggle then to fully empathize with in terms of Daniel's experience, you know, because it's constant. That social media, it's a constant reminder. Here's what you did. Here's what you said. Here's what you sound like. yeah, so there were a group of girls, and I ended up, Kieran, like I started 5th year in that school. I changed subjects. Like I changed subjects for my Leaving Cert so that I wouldn't have to sit in a class at least 4 times a week with a girl. I took on a completely different subject that I was like, I don't even know if I want to do this. But my mental health, like I have to. I spent lunchtimes like on my own. I spent so much time on my own. And I kept feeling, that like everybody must see this. You try and make yourself like as small as possible. You sit like on the stairwell, like of a part of the convent school that just wasn't used. And I remember like younger students, I was 16, no, not 16, I was 14 or 15 at the time. I remember like younger students, like first years walking past me, just kind of looking at me. Like, what's she doing? Like, she's a senior. Like, what's she doing here on her own? What a loser.
Thank you, Linda, for sharing. That can't be easy. You know?
Thanks, Kieran. And you make it easy to talk about these things, you know?
We try. And that's what Daniel has done. That's what we're doing with the whole book, is to get everybody talking about these topics, you know, and that's why, you know, this book is a celebration of children, teenagers who had the courage to speak out, you know. Linda, what would you like to say to a teenage Linda?
I think it's similar to Daniel, right? And maybe it's not about going against the grain, but it's similar as in there's something there about strength and courage, right? And having the courage, like, to love yourself. Because in a situation like that can be challenging. Because when we look around, like we don't see love in the way that we want it, right? So we don't see friends, peers like showing love to us. And if you've got a small group of people, if you've got a class full of students, if you've got a whole year group not showing like that kind of love that you want, that's hard, right? And so if we're in that situation, then it's almost like we've got an extra job to do of really loving ourselves, of really recognizing our own self-worth when we feel that others just don't see who we are and who we can be.
And, you know, it could be the same for the next question, Linda, is about what would you like to say to teenagers in 2022?
Yeah, I mean, show yourself love, care, and compassion. Life's not straightforward. It's not all fun and games. It can be incredibly brilliant. There's ups and downs. And so I feel it's really important to have that respect, love, and self-compassion for yourself first. And other people will see, like, I think through that, then you teach other people what you're not going to put up with, what it's not okay to have said, you know, to say or do towards you. And I think that gives you then like a certain strength in order to navigate the path that you're on. And you will find your own people. You'll find your own tribe who appreciate you for you.
Good. Linda, beautifully put. And thank you so much for your time this evening. Thank you for your honesty and your openness as always. Linda, thank you so much. Take care.
Gosh, thanks so much, Kieran. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.